Welcome to Commander Central, episode 181. And today we'll be taking a look at listener Joe Catrona's Athreos, the Veil-Shrouded deck. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And it's just us.
Once again.
Because we're recording on the same night we did the last show,
Yes.
where Chris is sick as well. So it's just the two of us. And for a second, I didn't have the picture of Athreos in front of me, and I almost said the God of Passage.
Ooh.
But it's the new Athreos, the 6-drop Veil-Shrouded.
Shroud-Veiled.
Shroud-Veiled, sorry. Athreos, the Shroud-Veiled. And that's the buy box, correct?
Correct. It was the buy box from Athreos Beyond Death.
It's a new card, obviously, but I have not seen this deck before.
Neither have I.
So I'm looking forward to taking a look at it. I think Joey Schultz did an article on EDH Rec
Commander versus, yeah.
comparing this with the old Athreos.
Yes.
So go check that out. Maybe we'll throw that in the show notes as well, because it's a fairly recent article, obviously.
2 weeks old, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to looking at this deck. But first, how is life going, Max?
I leave for Austin in 24 hours.
But when this airs,
I'll be taking off right about now.
Yep, nice. Excited?
I'm excited. It's going to be warmer than Wisconsin.
Good
I
enough.
get to eat barbecue and play EDH all weekend.
Good food. Oh, that's like Kansas City when we were there. It was just barbecue. It was so good.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing stories about it.
It'll be. I hope to return.
Okay. You might just stay in Austin.
The group chat has gotten a tad aggressive, and it's really bad when I'm one of the voices of reason.
No, I have to come back to my job. I can see that. I'm going to tell a story here. I've wanted to tell this, but like we had a bunch of guests in the show right after it happened, and I haven't had an opportunity to relay this. It's a non-magic story. It's a life story. Shortly after Christmas, my mother was going back to Florida. She drives from Wisconsin to Florida every year for the several months after Christmas until the weather gets nice again up here. So she was preparing to leave right after Christmas, and I talked to her before she left, and she told me she was all set to go, had her hotel reservation set, and she was staying for the first night in, speaking of Kansas City, staying in Kansas City the first night.
Okay.
And that struck me as not correct, given that Wisconsin to Florida is in no way a direct route or an indirect route even
To St. Louis.
through Kansas
Or
City.
Kansas City, yeah.
But I didn't say anything. Well, because I was thinking she meant St. Louis, because St. Louis is on the eastern end of
that makes
Missouri.
more sense.
And she had talked about like driving down and kind of looping through Louisiana to go over to Florida. So I'm like, okay, well maybe there's a major highway going from here down through St. Louis. Maybe that makes sense. It's far enough. I just assumed she meant St. Louis. So I didn't correct her.
Okay.
She did not mean St. Louis. She meant Kansas City. If listeners out there, if you are able to do so, and you're not familiar with the terrain, look at a map of Wisconsin and Florida, and then look where Kansas City lies. It's the opposite direction from where you have to go to get to Florida from Wisconsin. I actually checked the mileage at one point. It was further. I think it's further away from her destination than when she left. She drove all day and got further away from where she was going in Florida.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did.
Because it's on the other end of Missouri. So that is funny, and I would have chuckled at that story, except that she stayed in Kansas City and was intending to go east from there, and took a wrong turn and called my sister and I the next day from Oklahoma City.
So she went southwest.
which continues to go in the wrong direction by a long, long ways.
Wow.
That's not close to Florida.
No.
If you're driving from Wisconsin to Florida and people start wearing cowboy boots and cowboy hats, you've taken a wrong turn. That's my little bit of advice to anybody out there. Then...
Wait, you haven't been to northern Wisconsin
I guess.
have you?
Then, as she's trying to turn herself around and head back towards Florida, she goes through a toll gate, kind of on some highway.
Okay.
And her electronics in her vehicle shut off.
Like,
completely. So she's blocking the exit, basically, off of whatever. And people are just driving like up onto the grass around her at this point, because she can't move her vehicle. She can't. Nothing is working. And she was there for like an hour.
This has to be fake, right?
No,
You're making this part up.
This part is I didn't tell you this part?
No.
This is 100% real. So she's calling Ford, because she drives a Ford. She's calling like their support, trying to figure out what she can do. And they're like, well, You have to take it into a service, and she calls AAA, and her AAA coverage or whatever it is, it's only for east of the Mississippi River.
Oh, no.
Because she only drives east
of the Mississippi.
From Wisconsin to Florida. Certainly from Wisconsin to Florida, you don't detour through west of the Mississippi over into Oklahoma.
Without a good reason.
Sometimes apparently you do. So she had no luck there. Finally, she eventually gave up on that part of the process and was trying to figure out what she could do. So she got a hold of somebody at the Department of Transportation. I don't know if there's like a number on the side of
probably
the
on
thing.
on the toll.
They put her on the phone with somebody there who said, "Oh yes, this is a known issue with your Ford electronic system and our wireless system. It will shut off yours if you sit in front of the thing for X amount of time. Take your cup holder out of like the middle of the console.
Find the trigger. There's a reset button.
It wasn't even that. She had to like then put her keys, which have the remote start, down in there next to some sensor, and then hold this button and that button, and it rebooted her whole electronic system. And she was able to then drive away from this thing. And then finally, after that adventure and driving for 2 days, the next day was able to then drive to Florida, over the course of the next 4 days, because she was at that point well beyond her starting point. So that was my mom's trying to get to Florida, which she's done. This isn't like this is the first time she's driven to Florida. She takes this trip 4 times a year. I don't understand how that went so bad for her. I shouldn't laugh, but it was...
Oh, I am. I'm sorry.
And then my sister calls me and she's like, okay, do we need to not let her drive anywhere anymore? Like,
Flying.
She's not that old that we need to revoke her driving privileges. But it was pretty insane. So, yeah.
Is your car fancy enough where you can just program the route with leeway of a few construction areas?
Well,
it only goes that way.
Yeah, she has a decent GPS system, and that should have been fine. Yep. But then she was a little bit afraid to use her car GPS after her electronics failed. I'm trying to explain to her, well, that was a one situation with Oklahoma. Right. It probably won't be an issue again. And if it is, then
you know how to fix it.
Right. But she wound up using her phone. We walked her through bringing up her phone and bringing up her destination. So then at that point, she was using both systems. She was using her nav system in the car and the one on her phone, which occasionally sent her in different directions. But she eventually made it down there.
Well, I'm glad she made it there safely with as few hiccups as possible.
I've never driven to Florida, and I feel like I could have just left my house and said, I'm just going to drive in the general direction of Florida, and I could find where she's going better than whatever she did with this complicated plan taking her through Oklahoma City.
I've done that before.
Just drive east till something looks familiar.
Sort of, yeah.
I've done that before too.
I mean, I've done what your mom has done too.
I guess. Not quite that horribly wrong.
No.
Where you're going she intentionally went to Kansas City. The Oklahoma City part is a mistake. The Kansas City part was intentional.
True.
So, anyway, that's a lot of podcast time we've taken with talking about how my mom can't drive. Apologies for anyone who's listening.
Tune in next week for our new Who Can't Drive.
It was just such an amazing, insane story that I just had to share it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right. If you would like to reach out to us and say hello or tell us about how badly your parents navigate this country trying to get to wherever they go in the winter, how would you do that, Max?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central, Facebook searches CMDR Central, find all of our videos on YouTube by searching CMDR Central, and of course, CMDRCentral.com. And for your safety and all others on the road, do not do it while driving.
Do not do that while driving. You can also find us on FlipsideGaming.com.
Yeah, head over there and use promo code CMDR in all caps to get 10% off all orders, $10 or more.
And you can find us, last but not least, on Patreon.com.
Yep, head over there, check out our reward tiers, such as these Decks You Play series. We give out drawings every month, along with other fun stuff we're doing for our Patreon supporters.
Yeah. We try to give a lot back to people who support us. Our Slack channel is hopping all the time. I'm genuinely constantly shocked about how busy it is. And we have playmats we can send out to people at certain tiers and pins and all kinds of stuff.
Bunch of goodies.
Yeah. So if you could support us, that would be great. If not, we appreciate your listens anyway.
Exactly.
So thank you very much. So let's look at this deck here. This is submitted to us by supporter Joe Catrona. I think it's Catrona.
That's how I'm saying it.
So I'm going to say it, Joe can say, you guys are idiots. Like half of our Patreon supporters do when they get their name wrong.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. That's how it is in America. That's how we do it here in America.
Wisconsin. So typically, like always, we ask some few questions. So Joe says his meta is a small group of friends, mostly with a few other players that we get together with from time to time. He says that they are fairly casual meta. We usually go for building nice board states and take large explosive turns. We try not to pack our decks with infinite combos, but sometimes they do arise naturally. They recently went to Magic Fest New Jersey as a group. Hey, they actually probably got in and got to play.
Yeah.
And it was a nice to play against some different decks in the wild. We are going to try to branch out a bit in the future, and as a result, I can see our even small meta getting quicker. I'm assuming that's in their deck building and, deck play style. We also have introduced one of our playgroups members, two sons, to the game, so we are teaching the second generation the game that we all love, and it's very exciting.
The goal of the deck is to recur my own valuable creatures, to lock the board down and to take over the game through value. Also with Athreos' coin ability,
Corn, that's even better.
Athreos the farmer. He's able to take opponents' valuable creatures as well to further his own board state when necessary. That would be more like the ability that Karametra had, Karametra's corn ability.
E-I-E-I-O.
Yeah. As far as weaknesses, the deck is slow. If he's disrupted early, it has a bit of a tough time getting back into the game. The deck is packed with answers, but just not a lot to just win the game. He's relying too much on Grey Merchant, he feels, and at times just looking for ways to seal the game out. He has no budget restrictions. Feels like dual lands are necessary in his meta, but he has no real restriction otherwise for cards that will help improve the deck. It says, thanks a lot, Max and crew. All I get is an and crew here.
I'm the person that writes all these people.
All right, that's fair. Love the show and keep producing awesome content.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate that. Even the crew appreciates that, Joe. Thank you. So let's take a look at Athreos. First things first, I will read what Athreos does. Athreos Shroud-Veiled, not Veil Shrouded. 4 white and a black for a legendary enchantment creature god. Athreos Shroud-Veiled has indestructible and is a 4/7. As long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, Athreos isn't a creature. And at the beginning of your end step, put a coin counter on another target creature. Whenever a creature with a coin counter on it dies or is put in exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So dies or is exiled. That's
interesting.
That's basically, unless it's being tucked or bounced to the hand, you can control it. And it's not just a creature you control, it's any creature.
I do remember opponents' commanders, they do get the choice to put it in the command zone before you get a choice to take it.
So it's a theft deck, basically, in black and white, which doesn't usually do that, but it kind of does it with graveyard stuff, so it makes sense. It's kind of a black-white version of what Marchesa does to a degree.
Yeah.
When something with a counter on it dies that she controls, it comes back into play, you can take stuff, tends to sacrifice it, bring it back. It's got a bit of a feel for that. 6 mana is a bit, but I like it. Being indestructible helps a lot.
It definitely does. It definitely is a slower deck.
Yes.
It reads that way right on the face, and it's expensive. I mean, it's like your 15 mana Teysa you played at one point.
Yeah. A 6 is a good amount. Teysa was 7, I believe. 6 feels a little better, but 6 is still a lot.
And it doesn't help that this doesn't come down as a creature most times.
Yes.
So you're playing 6 mana for an enchantment with a cool ability that you have to wait till the end of your turn to use.
On the plus side of that is when it's not an enchantment, when it's not a creature, that makes it more difficult to remove.
Yes.
And the ability is still working there.
Yes.
So that can, I guess, be an upside here as well. I've seen that from Perforos players plenty of times where they're intentionally trying not to play that 5th pip because they want him to stay an enchantment that is tough to remove and keep doing damage versus when he becomes a creature, then Source of Plowshares becomes a much easier way to take him out.
Song of the Dryad, something like that.
Right, yeah. So that can be an upside here. Let's jump over and go over the land base, first of all. 37 lands for a 2-color deck. Notably, there are 17 basics, which is a pretty good amount, I think.
I really like that number in this deck.
That seems fair. For the lands, we have an Ancient Tomb, just a great bonus mana generator. An Arcane Lighthouse, which is a nice way to remove Shroud or Hexproof so you can get a coin counter in a thing.
Yes.
So that's a good card in general. Really good here. Bojuka Bog, we do preach the sermon of graveyard hate. That's a good way to deal with that. Cabal Coffers, always good. It can be pretty busted as well. And there is an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth in here to double that up. Castle Lochthwain, which is one of the new lands from, I forgot the name of the set.
Throne of Eldraine.
Throne of Eldraine, there we go. It comes into play tapped unless you control a swamp, but there's a good bit of swamps here. Taps for black, 2 black, and a colorless to draw a card and lose life equals the number of cards in your hand. Caves of Kolios, just a dual, command tower, detection tower, another way to knock hexproof off a thing, to put a coin counter on it. Fetid Heath, Godless Shrine, a few more duels. High Market as a sack outlet. Isolated Chapel, another duel. Orzhov Basilica is one of the bounce lands from original Ravnica set. And it's basic.
Fine.
It's fine. This is a Bojuka Bog deck, so it does give you an option to reset that as well.
Very true.
Phyrexian Tower, sack outlet. Reflecting Pool lets you make mana of a color of a land you control. Secluded Step is a step or steep. I think it's
Steep.
Is it steep? Okay.
Best card in Magic.
It is best card in Magic. You can cycle it. Silent Clearing is one of the Horizon lands. Vault of the Archangel gives yourself Death Touch and Lifelink, and a Volrath Stronghold to recycle a creature from your graveyard to the top of your library.
And the Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth.
Urborg, which I mentioned earlier, okay. Urborg enables all the Cabal Coffers shenanigans as well.
That's me not paying attention, everybody.
So what do you think of the land base?
I really like this land base for a slower deck. I like the amount of basics.
Yeah.
You really are more concerned about just having lands come in untapped.
Yes.
There are some changes I would just make. I really compared this to my Regnan Krav
because you have a similar.
I have a similar land base. Both my commanders are a lot of mana to cast. And it's a slower deck.
Yeah.
It's probably my slowest deck to get going. I think I would replace the Orzhov Basilica with Shambling Vent.
Okay.
Shambling Vent, that body does come in handy early on by turning it into that lifelinking body just as a blocker or an attacker to become an early game threat.
Particularly in a deck that, like I said, it is slow to take off. That gives you one more option.
Something I run in my deck are City of Brass or Mana Confluence, just a way to help. Since you don't have a lot of ways to ramp or fix your mana in these colors, it just guarantees you're on your colors.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
He is running a lot more basics than I am, so that maybe isn't an issue.
Yeah.
Looking at the rest of the deck, there are tons of cards in this deck that have double pips, whether it's double black, double white, or both in the same cost. So Nykthos would be great in this deck.
Very rarely do I have problems with a 2-color deck to not have Nykthos put me mana ahead.
Yeah.
And Secluded Steep, I don't know if I would have no problem replacing that with like a Nykthos.
Neither would I.
Also, Reflecting Pool is fine, but it feels bad dropping on turn 1. Because you can't even tap it for a colorless.
Correct.
It's only something that you can tap for. And that isn't going to happen that often, but like I think it's more a card you want to run in like a 5-color deck than it is a card in a 2-color deck.
Like a 3-color deck,
yeah. Where it can become another command tower essentially. In this deck, I don't think you need the fixing that badly to worry about it. Yeah. And that would be an easy thing to replace with Nykthos.
If you're going to play one of them, play the other one, Exotic Orchard. That's the Fellor Storm land, right?
Yes, yeah.
At least you're getting generic mana.
Basically, unless you're the first player going first where no one else has a land out, you can at least make something off it. But even I don't think in a 2-color deck you need to even be that esoteric. I just think you will be fine running almost anything. I just don't think you need Reflecting Pools. Is too niche for this particular kind of deck, I think.
And then my final land, which is actually a rock star in my Regnan Krav deck, is Terrain Generator. That
was the main suggestion I had, particularly with that many basics.
Yes. I have sculpted my turn, 3 through 6 plays in that deck, knowing that Terrain Generator is going to be my third land on my turn 3 land because I still have 2 more basics in my hand, so I can start ramping out.
Yep. Yeah, really, really solid card in a 2-color deck, even a lot of monocolor decks. I'm a big fan of Terrain Generator. This is kind of a perfect deck for it.
Yes.
I would also say Scavenger Grounds again. We tout that, but like you can't have too much answers for graveyards, so I would consider that as well. Other than that, that's a good-looking land base, I think.
Yeah.
I wonder how often Castle Lochthwain is worth it, but I guess I have not seen the card in play that much.
This deck does not have a lot of draw.
It doesn't.
So
You're correct. You're right.
I'm good with anything that's going to give
Sure.
us draw.
Okay, I agree with that. And it's one of those things too. I guess how often do you take 4 off a Sylvan Library if this is going to hit you? If this is going to ding you for 4,
Did it all night
probably
last
on
night.
average.
Yeah.
So
4, how about 8?
yeah, well, yeah, that's true. So yeah, no, what we're saying is though it makes sense. There's not a ton of draw, so your hand won't have a ton of cards in it most of the time,
Right.
and you could use any draw you can get. So that makes sense. Let's look at the artifacts, Max. What do we got here?
We have 16 artifacts. So we have Arcane Signet, Cauldron of Souls, Commander's Sphere, Conjurer's Closet, which is a key piece with Athreos.
Yep.
Lifeline, Lightning Greaves, Mind Stone, Orzhov Signet, Panharmonicon, Phyrexian Altar, Soul Ring, Strionic Resonator, another key piece for Athreos. We have the Talisman of Hierarchy, Thran Dynamo, Whip of Erebos, the final fun piece for this deck,
Yeah.
and Worn Power Stone.
Nice. Let's go over these here. For Mana Rocks, we're looking at Arcane Signet, the Commander Sphere, Mind Stone, Orzhov Signet, the Talisman, Soul Ring, Thran Dynamo, Worn Power Stone. That's 8 pieces of ramp and from the Mana Rocks. I don't know, for an Orzhov deck, that's pretty good.
It's more than I run.
They always say, like, you always hear the generic 10 pieces of ramp. I think that's really tough to do a lot of times, unless you really broaden your definition of what is considered ramp.
Right.
I tend to mostly be looking at creature, like mana dorks or land ramp pieces or rocks. I don't usually dig too much beyond that to call something ramp. Like, I wouldn't call Smothering Tithe ramp.
Okay.
It's not that it's not great and doesn't put you ahead, but like it's not something that you can rely on being a 4-drop, and you can't use it that turn until someone else draws a card. But I think that's a good amount. That's a pretty healthy amount of ramp, and I think this deck needs it, so that all seems solid. So among interesting things here, you mentioned, first of all, Conjurer's Closet as a piece here. And I think a Lifeline, which I will read, everyone knows Conjurer's Closet, at the end of your turn, you exile a thing and bring it back.
The fancy thing with Conjurer's Closet here, in this deck specifically, is when you exile your opponent's creature you got from the coin counter, Conjurer's Closet brings it back under your control, where most flicker effects or exile effects put them back under the owner's control.
Yes.
So this is one way to ensure you keep what you take.
Yep. So yeah, once you have it, it lets you keep it.
Yes.
Yep. A Lifeline is an artifact from Urza's Saga. 5 mana. Whenever a creature dies, if another creature is on the battlefield, return the first card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So as far as I can tell, there's no really like cool, weird synergy there with Athreos. Is there anything that you can think of?
My gut was thinking that it was just keeping his stuff coming back.
Well, I mean, most of his creatures have some kind of an ETB ability, so I'm assuming the thought is, and actually Conjurer's Closet that kind of applies to too, even if you're not doing abusive stuff with it, just blinking the Ravenous Chupacabra or the Puppeteer Click or Gonti is just great value.
Yeah.
So I'm betting that Lifeline is kind of the same thing. It's worth running just as a way to generate value off creatures with a good ETB. Panharmonicon, same thing, because they have an ETB, so you're copying with that. It makes sense. Strionic Resonator is a way to copy the ability to put a coin on a thing.
Yes.
So it lets you do 2 of those coins per turn. And that seems pretty useful in this deck. I like Whip of Erebos a lot in here.
Yeah, for sure. You can whip something back at your end step, put a coin counter on it. It gets exiled from the whip trigger, and you get it back.
It's like whip is worded in a way that you can't abuse it. Whenever the creature leaves play, it gets exiled.
Right.
So you're not supposed to be able to continually recycle the same thing with whip. However, Athreos is kind of built in a way that lets you work around whip's workaround.
For sure.
And it's a good card in general, like just as a way to give your creatures for the 4 mana to give all your creatures lifelink is not terrible in black.
It's not at all, especially because unlike a lot of the cards from the original Theros set, which were like attacking creatures have, like Bola Nihilus says attacking creatures have death touch. This is just a flat out static ability. It's not attacking creatures have lifelink. It's your creatures you control have lifelink.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really solid card, and it's a real neat little interaction here that I'm glad to see show up in the deck.
Yep.
So anything you would like to suggest or add or remove here from this list?
There's one artifact that I would add, and that would be Expedition Map. Just as a way to go get Cabal Coffers, or Urborg, or Nykthos, or any land you really need.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Otherwise, I like it. This is just, making it so you can play all these big, expensive spells we'll get to later in the show.
Yeah. Thran Dynamo, I haven't been running much lately because it is 4 mana, but But it does make 3 and your commander does cost a gazillion to cast. It kind of makes sense.
I like it over Worn Power Stone in this deck.
Worn Power Stone is one I would be tempted to pull.
I don't like that Worn Power Stone comes in tapped.
For 3 mana, if I'm going to play an artifact that comes into play tapped, at that point, I almost rather just run Nyx Lotus, which is probably going to make you more mana than Worn Power Stone ever will.
And that's at 4.
It also comes into play tapped, but it's at 4.
I mean,
I would probably just try to find a 2-mana rock to play in that slot. Everflowing Chalice. Because if you need to cast it at 4, it comes into play with this, and it can make you 2 mana, same as Worn Power Stone. And you can cast it on turn 2 if you need to.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. It sounds like he's a couple of years behind us. Once upon a time, I think we both ran a lot of Worn Power Stones.
Oh, for sure.
And as things have sped up, because people have just gotten more into Commander and paid more attention and listened to podcasts.
I remember when we were excited that it finally got reprinted in Eternal Masters.
No, for sure.
Yes,
Seriously.
It's uncommon.
I can in a foil. We can get a foil.
We can get
Worn
a
Power
foil.
Stone.
And then it's like, oh, we don't run it anymore.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like that, as that kind of thing has happened, that's kind of one of the cards that I've replaced in a lot of my decks, and I would probably consider Everflowing Chalice in that slot or something along those lines. But 2 drops are kind of the sweet spot. Although you have a little more flexibility when your commander costs 6.
Yeah.
So, anything else there?
That's all I had was just the Expedition map.
Yeah.
Just because, again, that's a lot of mana rocks to pump out your very expensive commander.
And being able to go grab that Arcane Lighthouse so you can get through, put a coin in someone else's stuff, or being able to go grab the other half of Urborg or Cabal Coffers is really nice. Same thing, Vault of the Archangel is worth getting sometimes.
Oh, I love Vault of the Archangel.
Yeah, or Vora's Stronghold sometimes. Like there's a lot of good lands in here that are probably worth chasing down. And X-Map being able to do so is pretty nice.
Yeah.
However, I guess you could just run a regular tutor. You are in black, but
good. But do you really want to waste your demonic tutor to go get a land?
No, but you have the option at least. Like
True.
If you need to go get half, you can. But you also have the option to get something else. I need a board wipe really bad right now. I can go get a board wipe.
Right.
But I also appreciate not running a lot of like just generic tutors too. Those do amp the power level up and make it really easy to go grab a combo piece too. So let's look at enchantments next. There's 4 of them. Blind Obedience, which is kind of a staple in white decks for sure, and this is a Orzhov deck who can run it. Debtor's Knell, which we'll come back to here in a minute. Phyrexian Arena, another draw staple. And Smothering Tithe, a token-making staple that makes you a ton of artifact ramp.
Yes.
Card is pretty bonkers. So Debtor's Knell is the one I'll read. It's 7 mana for an enchantment, 4 and triple hybrid black-white. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. What do you think of Debtor's Knell here?
So it's 7 mana.
Yes.
And it has to wait an entire turn to do anything.
Yes.
So it's kind of it's a backup to your commander, I guess,
Sure.
in a way. I don't know. I'd rather maybe just risk running something like Living Death.
Yeah.
And do like a mass exile and bring everything out of the graveyards instead. For what, 5 mana, 6 mana?
Yeah.
It is an enchantment, so it's somewhat hard to hit if you're playing against the right colors. So,
but you can also spend 7 mana and have someone remove it immediately because you have a full tripper on the board for everyone to deal with it.
Nature's Claim is a single green mana.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are games in his meta where this is a bomb.
It's a cool card.
It's a cool card.
I love
it's
this
a powerhouse. And I'm also sure there's games where he plays it and it doesn't make it to do it once. It also requires stuff in the graveyard.
Yes. Right.
Which is another huge thing.
Yeah. I feel like if I'm going to spend that much mana for an enchantment to do a similar thing, I would probably just run Grave Betrayal, which is also 7, 5 in double black. Because Grave Betrayal, that brings a card back when one of your opponent's creatures dies, you can bring it back with a +1 counter on it even. But that works right away. Like if you play Grave Betrayal and you happen to have mana left to board wipe,
boom,
you get all the stuff.
Yeah.
It can trigger multiple times if multiple creatures are dying because of whatever you're doing. So it doesn't do something on ETB, but like it's much easier to have it trigger immediately without having to wait a full chipper on the board.
Yeah.
So if I was going to run a 7 mana enchantment that did a similar thing, I would probably run Grave Betrayal over Debtor's Knell. But
Okay.
I like the card. It's fun. But I would bet there's a lot of times when it just comes in play for 7 mana and someone removes it before it does anything.
Yeah.
So, what about the rest of the cards?
I think they're fine.
Yeah.
So Joe definitely talked about how if the deck gets, off kiltered early in the game, it's hard to rebuild. So in my opinion, the only way to since your deck is kind of slow, let's make your opponent's decks kind of slow and maybe add another Blind Obedience S card in like Authority of the Consuls.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You could also go like a prison route and add Ghostly Prison.
Which, or we just mentioned, Aura of Silence.
Aura of Silence.
Makes stuff cost 2 more for your opponents. And what's nice about Aura of Silence, it's never a dead card.
No.
Even if people can afford to pay the tax on turn 14 or something.
It's still 2 mana they had to pay.
It's still 2 mana they had to pay, and it's still a removal spell. You can sacrifice it to destroy a thing.
Yes.
And there's been plenty of times when when you've played Ghostly Prison, and I've known I want to play a juicier target, but I still have to deal with it. I have to, if I play this thing, he's just going to sacrifice Ghostly Prison.
Or Silence.
Or Silence, sorry. So I have to force you to crack it.
Right.
By targeting it, which wastes my removal spell. Basically, I spend 2 or 3 mana on whatever I cast to hit your Aura of Silence. You crack it immediately, because why not?
And then you play your Doubling Season.
Right, but to do so, I had to spend a spell, and then oftentimes you hit one of my things with the sacrificed Aura of Silence. So, it's really difficult to deal with once it comes down, and doing so tends to be pretty expensive. So yeah, that would be one I could consider there as well.
I have 2 others. The first one is a win con.
Yeah.
It goes great with Smothering Tithe, and that's Revel in Riches.
Yes, particularly in this kind of deck where you were killing stuff on the reg.
Yes.
I would run Revel in Riches. Even if Smothering Tithe didn't exist,
I would still run it.
It's still a pretty good card in this deck. With Smothering Tithe.
Is even more bonkers.
Yes. You're not running tutors, really. There's not
There's no Enlightened Tutor. There's no Idyllic Tutor.
You just have to have both cards out to get the combo. They're both good without each other.
Yeah.
That's absolutely one I would include here.
My final one is a card that'll work really well with Athreos' coin ability, and that's Grasp with Fate.
Which one's that?
So this is a 3 mana, 1 white enchantment from Commander 2015, and it was reprinted in the Mystery Boosters at GPs.
Okay.
When Grasp of Fate enters the battlefield, for each opponent, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls until Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. So, if you have a coin counter on all of your opponents, at least one of each of your opponent's creatures, you hit all of those, and you just get them because they go to exile.
With one
spell.
One spell. And even if you just hit one creature and the other ones are just gone because you don't want to deal with them, that's fine too.
Or it gets rid of that pesky enchantment or that pesky planeswalker.
Yeah, hit a lot of different things too. That's a good pick here as well.
Yeah. What about you, Dana? What do you got for enchantments?
The big one, the main one I had that I had circled here twice was Revel in Riches.
Gotcha.
That was the big one that jumped out at me. So I'm a fan of that card in general. This is a great deck for it. Okay, let's look at the instants here.
There are 10 instants, and they are all removal spells with the exception of Teferi's Protection. So we have Anguish Unmaking, Despark, Eerie, Interlude, also not a removal spell to a degree. Generous Gift, Mortify, Path to Exile, Return to Dust, Swords to Plowshares, that Teferi's Protection, and Utter End.
Bunch of good removal and ways to dodge other people's removal, basically.
Yeah, I see nothing wrong with this, and honestly, it looks exactly like what I would run.
I don't know if I would change anything in this removal package. Return to Dust, maybe.
It's still good, in my opinion.
It is. It's fine.
I mean, you could add Kaya's Guile.
Yes. Kaya's Guile, I think, is a really underappreciated card in general. And I'm going to read it here really quick.
1 Orza, 1 white-black, instant, choose 2 of the 4 modes. You can entwine for an additional 3 mana. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Gain 4 life. Exile all opponents' graveyards. Make a 1/1 Spirit with Flying.
Yes. Nice.
That's not in the correct order, though.
Not in the correct order.
4 life is last.
Yes.
Sack, Spirit, Graveyards, Life.
Sack, Graveyard, Spirit Life.
Okay, because you do resolve them in order when you entwine it.
Yes.
Or in any you resolve them in order based on the card.
You're probably not going to gain 4 life very often, and you're probably not going to make a spirit very often.
Those are the modes I use.
I suppose in your regular
I need
crowd
life
deck,
and I need
that's
bodies.
True. Good point. But each opponent sacrifices a creature. Okay, they're probably not going to choose the one with the coin counter on it, but that means that they've gotten rid of one other thing, and then you're going to take the coin counter one using something. Exile cards from each opponent's graveyard. That's almost always great too.
Yes.
That's a fantastic card that I'm shocked doesn't see more play. So yeah, that would be one I might consider maybe over Return to Dust or Crush Contraband. Actually, I've started to like more than Return to Dust. If I'm going to spend 4 mana on that kind of removal, I've started to like that a little bit more.
You'd rather hit one of each than 2 of one or 2 of the other,
Yes,
depending
and
when you cast it.
always be able to do it at instant
Yeah.
speed versus having to do it main phase to get any value out of it. Because the reality is, if you're casting Return to Dust on other people's turns, that feels terrible.
Yeah.
4 mana to exile a thing, whereas if you are Crush Contraband, you can still do it. It's not quite as flexible, but I think being able to do it at instant speed on everyone's turn without it being like a feel bad because you spent 4 mana for that, I think is worth.
For sure.
So I might make that move, but there's probably a little bit of personal preference there. We have 7 sorceries here: Damnation, Decree of Pain, Kaya's Wrath, Merciless Eviction, Night's Whisper, Reanimate, and Sign in Blood. So 4 board wipes, 2 draw spells, and Reanimate, bring stuff back from the graveyard. What do you think of these?
I would like to see 1 more draw spell, maybe 2. You read the bones, or what's the other one you like? Draw 3, lose 3.
Ambition's Cost
That
and
one.
Ancient Craving, both. Yeah, I draw does a lot of work in terms of rebuilding, and I would agree. This deck needs a couple more sources. There is Arena. I guess Decree of Pain does draw when you cast it at the right time. I agree. I would look at probably Read the Bones and maybe 1 more in here of some sort. I don't know what exactly, but I think it does need a little bit more draw.
What are your opinions on Kaya's Wrath?
I don't like it that much. It's 4 mana, 2 white, 2 black. Destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. I think it may be in like your deck, Max, where you, even then, you don't care about life gain for life gain's sake. You care about life gain when you have creatures in play.
Right. I don't like it because of the extremely hard casting cost. I mean,
For sure.
double white, double black, that could be hard to hit sometimes. You're also only gaining life off of your creatures dying, so
Not
if you
everyone
cast
else's.
this from behind, you're not really getting any benefit out of it.
And you usually want to be casting it from behind.
Right. I would rather spend 1 more mana and cast Fumigate for 3 white, where it destroys all creatures and you gain a life for everything destroyed.
Easier casting cost,
Yes.
for sure. Or Wrath of God and just make it a nice clean.
Exactly.
Or, Cleansing Nova or Austere Command and be able to like have a modular effect for a couple more mana.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's nice to note here, a lot of times, like, I think Merciless Eviction's a great card, but it's also one of those cards where sometimes you're like, well, I want to take people's stuff, so I don't want to cast it because it's an exile effect. You don't care in this situation. Like,
No.
Athreos works around that too, so that's kind of a neat little interaction worth pointing out.
I have 2 other suggestions here that are for a win con.
Okay.
And yes, they're very predictable. Exsanguinate and Torment to Hailfire. For the type of meta he plays in, where they like the big splashy plays, nothing says fun like a Torment for 20, in my opinion. Some other people may not feel that way. I know you don't really like winning that way, but I think this is the type of meta that would enjoy
Sure.
doing that a couple times at least, and then worst case, you take it out of the deck and...
Yeah.
And
That's fair.
Torment at least plays in with Athreos. If they sack all those creatures with coin counters on them, you get them back.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
So those would be my other 2 suggestions, just because they are win con other than Grave Merchant of
Sure.
Asphodel.
Yep.
Notice I never said Blood Bond. Notice
You did.
that everybody...
I did. We skipped over the enchantments with no Blood Bond mentioned at all. That was impressive. 1 Planeswalker, which is Kaya Ghost Assassin, and she basically does blink things. She's 2 white and a black. You can spend 0 to exile her or up to 1 target creature and have it come back into play. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you lose 2 life. Each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life for her -1 and -2. Each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card. Basically, it's the 4 mana to use a blink.
I would either run another blink or run a draw spell.
I think this is where I would put a draw spell in.
Yeah.
She's fine. I think she's a perfectly
cool.
reasonable card. I don't know if she's good enough, and I feel like you're going to get more gas out of just drawing
3 cards.
3 cards
For
and
4
losing 3
mana.
life, than you will off this.
For sure.
I like Kaya. It's a neat card, but I don't know if it does quite enough. Last but not least here, we have the 24 creatures that round out this deck.
Hoofda.
So there's a lot of big beaters here. Angel of Despair, Ashen Rider, Cavalier of Dawn, Lord of the Void, Massacre Worm, Noxious Gear Hulk. Puppeteer Click is 5. Runescarred Demon and Sepulchral Primordial are both 7. Drops down a little bit. There's Basilica Bellhaunt, Burnished Heart, Charming Prince, Cryptghast to double up those swamps. Dusk Legion Zealot, Eldrazi Displacer to blink these creatures. Flicker Wisp, same thing. Gonti and Grey Merchant, both great for value. Murderous Rider, Necrotal, Ravenous Chupacabra, which I mentioned earlier. Solemn Simulacrum, and Yeheni Undying Partisan. So 24 creatures is a good amount, but this deck is very creature-based. That makes sense. Anything that you don't like here in this list, Max?
I'm not a big fan of the Basilica Bellhaunt.
Okay.
I get, double white, double black that helps towards the devotion to Athreos.
Mm-hmm.
But entering the battlefield and making your opponents discard a card and you gain 3 life doesn't seem like a very good payoff for me when it doesn't have evasion. It's just a 3/4. Something I would run instead would be Cataclysmic Gearhulk.
Okay. That was out of the Kaladesh, right?
That's the white Gearhulk from Kaladesh. It's 3 white for an artifact creature. That's a 4/5. It has Vigilance. And then when it enters the battlefield, each player chooses an artifact, creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control and sacrifice the rest. So it's a pseudo board wipe, but if they all have coin counters on them, you're getting a bunch of creatures back.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And it's a 4/5 body.
Right, which is almost always going to be useful.
Yeah.
The Gray Merchant is a win condition. If he likes doing that, there's always kind of the backup Kukushko to do a similar thing as a way to win a game. The creature base looks pretty good, though. It's a lot of stuff that ETBs like, and Ravenous Chupacabra destroys target creature, so like you can specifically pick the one with a coin counter.
Yes.
Same thing with, there's one more in here that does a similar thing.
Murderous Rider.
There we go, Murderous Rider. So having those two there side by side is a nice little option. Actually, Necrotal does as well.
Yeah, Necrotal has a little more of a clause on it because it has to be a non-artifact. It's a
non-artifact, non-black.
Yeah, but I mean, it can still hit probably what you want.
Yeah. More often than not, yes.
This is a very big ETB deck.
Yes.
Big enter the battlefield value deck. And the pieces here are in the deck to support it. So I think he's chosen the right ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this creature base a little bit.
Now that I see the Eldrazi displays that are in the deck, I definitely think I'm going to, putting in more colorless mana rocks might help because you definitely always need that colorless mana source no matter what.
And that's another thing, something like Nykthos has the option to tap for colorless mana, which gives you that choice to make the colorless mana to activate that displacer.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Sepulchral Primordial. That's a really strong card, and I'm always shocked that it's only like $1. Rinceguard Demon's really, really good. Solemn, I think, is not that great anymore. But you can blink it in this deck.
You can blink it, you can get it back, you can...
And it's black and white, you don't have a lot of other ramp options. I think it's pretty decent.
And we've been really focusing on the fact that the coin counters are going to go on other people's stuff, but you can put it on Solemn and it dies, you draw the card, it comes back, you get a land. It dies, draw a card, get it back, play a land.
Now, what do you think about Burnished Heart?
I have never been a fan of Burnished Heart.
I just took it out of my Vela deck.
I saw that.
And I have not got a chance to cast a card I replaced it with yet, but it's pretty slow.
Yes, so I'm a green mage. So, I like my ramp on sorcery cards. 3 to cast this, and then essentially...
Three more to crack it.
3 more to crack it, or saving that 3 mana so you can block with it, then crack it. It's a lot of work.
And it's so much work that I don't know how often you're going to want to be doing that multiple times, even if you can get it back. Do you want to put a coin counter on this and then sacrifice to bring it back? Like, maybe. I don't know. Maybe you do. That just seems like a lot of mana. And I feel like you're going to be doing nothing on your turns but trying to get lands off Burnished Heart while everyone else actually tries to win the game.
I think you could easily cut a couple of these creatures, drop the creature count down to 21 to 23, add in some of the other win condition cards we've talked about, like your Revel in Riches, maybe a Torment of Hellfire, and cut cards like Burnished Heart, because that's where you want to be using the mana from Cabal Coffers and Urborg to pump into those spells or create all your treasure tokens somehow.
And there are black creatures that do care about stuff dying that draw you cards. I was thinking a Disciple of Bolus would be a perfectly decent creature to run in here.
That'd be a great one because you sacrifice something with a coin counter on it that you've put, and then you draw cards, you lose life, draw the cards, and you get that creature back that had the coin counter on it.
It's 4 mana, 3 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice another creature, you gain X life and draw X cards where X is that creature's power. So sacrifice one of your coin counter things. It's just going to come back anyway, draw a mitt full of cards. Disciple of Bolus is there as a body that you can recur or blink to do it again. I think I like that more than I would like something like Burnished Heart. I think there's a lot more upside on something like Disciple of Bolus.
Yeah.
Anything else here?
No, that's all I have.
I looked at it and I'm like, what you could do, and he was talking about his meta getting faster. There are a lot of big, expensive things here. Angel of Despair we mentioned, that's 7 mana. 8 mana for Ashen Rider, 5 mana for Cavalier Dawn, 7 for Lord of the Void, 6 for Massacre Worm, 6 for Noxious Gear Hulk, 7 and 7 for the Primordial and the Demon. If you wanted to, you could clean a couple of those things out just to lower your curve, make the deck a little bit faster.
Right.
I think maybe Cavalier Dawn, but it does destroy a thing. Like, it comes into play, destroys a thing, and so that's...
And it's 3 Devotion.
Yeah.
Like, that's, with Athreos out, you're almost there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would maybe do that, but like I also look at every one of these creatures, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that, aside from maybe Basilica Belghaunt or Burnished Heart. So I don't have anything I want to say I want to take out either necessarily. It's just a weird, unique deck, and I'm really, really into it.
Yeah, it definitely is. This Athreos Shroud-Veiled is one of those commanders where you try to build the deck that uses it, but you also have to build the deck where maybe you can't have your commander out.
Yes, right.
And this is what I think Joe's trying to do, is he's having all these creatures in here that have these ETB destroy something or gain some value. So on the worst case, when he has those games where he can't keep Athreos out for whatever reason, he can still participate.
Yeah, for sure. So any final thoughts here, Max?
This is a really cool deck for a commander I haven't seen yet in the wild.
Yeah, me either.
Like I just kind of said, you have to build the deck with your commander in mind, more up front, but also with the idea of like, well, if I can't cast this expensive commander...
Yeah, because 6 becomes 8, becomes 10 really fast.
Is my deck still going to want to do its thing? And what this deck does is blow stuff up.
Right, yep. Which is almost always good.
Oh, yeah. I love blowing stuff up.
So do I. All right. I think that is going to wrap up this show. Thank you very much, Joe. We appreciate you sharing this deck with us. And thanks to all our Patreon supporters. It's a big deal that all you folk out there support us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We will be back next Monday with a regular show. Until then, I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.